We have one more incredible speaker to share with you today at the National Pro-Life Summit. And before I introduce this incredible person, I have to say, one of you made my day in the elevator earlier. I can't remember your name. I introduced myself to you. And you said that I was funny, which is a lie, by the way. That is just not even remotely true. Women can't be funny. Just kidding. Just kidding. It's a joke. Come on. But I promise you, no one is funnier in the business than our evening keynote speaker. Seth Dillon is an entrepreneur, a venture investor, a speaker, and of course, a humorist. He is currently the CEO of the Babylon Bee, a fast-growing satire news site that has overtaken The Onion in traffic and engagement. Taking on the tone of a traditional news media publication, The Bee creates satire out of real-world events and public figures. Recently, Dillon and his brother Dan co-founded Not The Bee, which is way funnier than the Babylon Bee, a humor-based entertainment site with the Babylon Bee's original founder, Adam Ford. He sits on the board of Parler, a popular free speech alternative to Twitter and Facebook, and also plays an active advisory or investor role in a number of other countries that you're likely familiar with, including Dwell, EV Magazine, Thinker, and The Flip Side. He's a graduate of Palm Beach Atlantic University and lives with his wife and 2 sons in Juno Beach, Florida. You likely remember this incredibly viral clip of Seth fearlessly defending life on the Joe Rogan Experience. Take a look.
I don't have the right to tell my 14-year-old daughter she has to carry her rapist baby. You understand
that?
To
look that woman in the eye who was the born
listen,
of a rape.
Do you understand that? That's a 14-year-old child.
I know.
If a 14-year-old child gets raped, you say that they have to carry that baby?
I don't think 2 wrongs make a right. I don't think
That's
murder.
not- I don't think that's
murder is
wrong.
an answer to. I don't think murder fixes a rape.
What if we're talking about an abortion when the fetus, literally it's like 6 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 days? What if she just turned positive, just now? Positive for pregnancy.
I just disagree that.
What if it just happened
that
today?
You can draw a line on when.
You can't.
Once
So
life
you
has
can't
begun,
do,
I don't
at
think you
the
draw
very
lines.
moment.
I would lay it out like this. I would say, it is wrong to intentionally kill an innocent human life. Abortion intentionally kills an innocent human life. Therefore, abortion is wrong. And I don't think any of the examples of like, oh well, how developed is it? You know, can it think? Is it conscious? Can it dream? Can it feel pain?
So for you, it's the moment of conception.
I think that if it's a human life, a distinct human life, then I think it's wrong to end its life. And
so you think that do you think that once the conception happens, there's some sort of a miraculous event, like at the very moment, like you could literally get to the point where the sperm cracks the egg. If you could scoop that egg out right there, would that be abortion?
Well, I mean, at some point you're going to have to say there was a magic moment that happened because you believe that we eventually become valuable humans, right?
Well, listen,
where's the moment where you think the magic happened? When we start talking about harmful misinformation and the types of things that are considered, like that I say or that we tweet or the jokes that we make that are considered harmful misinformation. I'm like, well, what about calling that baby a clump of cells? I think that's harmful misinformation because then you're encouraging people to kill it like it's nothing when it's actually a human life. It's a developing human life. I think abortion is healthcare the way that rape is lovemaking. If we want to use rape as an example, I think they're opposites, and it's like these are euphemisms that we use. You know, we use the word healthcare. We're talking about a procedure that ends an innocent human life, and we're calling it healthcare. That's like calling rape lovemaking.
And this is why it's such a human issue, because I see what you're saying.
So, you guys have heard of the Babylon Bee, I guess? Wow, what a welcome. He got you guys really fired up, jeez. And Isabel was funny for a woman. I told her not to be funny. I said, you can't be funny before I come out here. What an honor it is to be here. I'm so appreciative to have been asked to come and speak here. And I'm thankful to you guys. I'm thankful to all of you that you came out yesterday and today. There is no more urgent cause than this. There's no crisis more worthy of your time and attention than this one. And I'm often asked, I get asked this all the time, because I talk about abortion a lot. You'd be surprised, I run a comedy site. You wouldn't think that this would come up that much. Somehow it ended up coming up on Joe Rogan. But I'm asked, why do you care so much? Why do you care so much about this? And I give the same response every time when I get this question. You should give this response too. Why don't you? What kind of question is that? What do you mean, why do I care so much? Countless, defenseless, innocent little lives hang in the balance, and you're asking me with a straight face. You're putting on a straight face and asking me, why do you care so much? And it's a ridiculous question. I think we should all care a lot more. And I think we should turn that on people. We should always turn it on them. Ask them, why don't they care? Make them defend their callousness and complacency in the face of unspeakable evil. Make them defend their lack of interest in this topic. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad that you're here equipping yourselves and preparing yourselves, because you never know where God is going to lead you. You never know where you're going to end up and when you're going to end up discussing topics like abortion, a big, big, sensitive topic that's very difficult to tackle. You may at some point end up on a show like Joe Rogan's Experience. I did not see that coming. I didn't see it coming my whole life that I would ever end up in a situation like that. His is the biggest platform there is. He has like 12 million viewers on his show. It's the biggest platform I think that life has ever been defended on before. And so, and I didn't prepare for that, by the way. Well, I didn't expect it. We didn't have a conversation that happened before that show took place where we talked about topics that we were going to address. That doesn't happen. You just show up and you talk. You sit down, he pours a little whiskey in a glass, you toast, and you talk. And so you have no idea where the conversation is going to go. So I didn't expect the conversation to go around to abortion, but I was prepared to talk about abortion. I'd prepared because I'd actually taken the time to not just know what I believe, but why I believe it and be able to articulate that. And I think it's important that you guys are here today and that you're equipping yourselves to do that. So credit to all of you. Give yourselves a round of applause for caring. So I am the CEO of a comedy site. We make jokes on the internet. And I'm talking to you about abortion. We've been fact-checked, censored, and smeared. Have you seen all of this stuff that's been going on with us? The attacks that have been going on with the Babylon Bee? Fact-checked, censored. We've seen nearly 100 of our jokes come true as if they were prophecies instead of punchlines. It's real. I have a spreadsheet. I linked to it at one point. I think it's on my link tree. You can go and look at the spreadsheet. We're close to 100 now. Jokes that we told that either hours, weeks, months, or years later came true because absurdity is catching up to us. So the absurdity that is a joke becomes a reality before you know it. That's the world that we're living in right now today. There is a war on reality, reason, truth, and our most basic, most fundamental right, life. There's a war. It's not hyperbole to say that. It's an all-out attack. But I think it's actually obviously true. I think we've just become so accustomed to the madness that sometimes it's easy to miss it and overlook it. But we need to resist that tendency, I think. We need to continually remind ourselves that the craziness around us is not normal or good or deserving of our acceptance. It must be consciously and constantly resisted. There's no such thing as a family-friendly drag show. There is no such thing as a safe abortion. There's no such thing as a pregnant man. Am I allowed to say that? They will argue with you on these points. They will fight you. They will fight you tooth and nail, but there is no such thing as a transgender kindergartner. The world is turning into a parody of itself. The left is trying to turn the world, they're trying to turn it into the upside down. You know, where right is wrong, left is right, black is white, truth is false, and falsity is truth. And they want you to join them. In fact, they're not asking. They're telling you, you must join them. And one of the most valuable contributions you can make to society, besides having children of your own, is to stubbornly resist. Do not go along. Fight. I think one of the most common misconceptions about what we do, there's maybe a lot of them, but one of the most common ones is people have this idea that comedy is easier today than it ever has been. They are so wrong. You gotta understand how satire works. If you understand how satire works, we have to exaggerate the truth to make the joke, right? We follow the truth in the direction it's pointing, and we exaggerate it. It's like a caricature. You draw a caricature, you draw out people's features, you know, they've got a big forehead, you make it really big. We exaggerate the truth to make a point. And how do you do that in this day and age? People tell me that our job should be so much easier now. Are you kidding me? Imagine if your job was to write jokes that are funnier than what Democrats are doing in real life. I'm serious. Think about it for a second. Imagine if I'm paying you, you're on my payroll, and your job is to write jokes that are funnier than a Kamala Harris speech. It can't be done. We try and we fail all the time. We try to be funnier, and then reality catches up to us. These jokes come true. Or they get a truth rating. Snopes fact checks it and rates it false. It's one of the most ridiculous ways. I used to say this is how comedy was under attack, was that this fact-checking was a big issue for us. Back in 2018, they started fact-checking everything because they got this idea that Trump only won the election because conservatives were spreading fake news on the internet, using Facebook, Twitter, and the other social platforms to spread fake news. And so they needed to start fact-checking to make people aware of what was actually true so they wouldn't believe these lies, so that we wouldn't elect Republicans anymore. So they started this whole fact-checking apparatus, and they started rating everything, including jokes written by conservatives, false. And it's better to show you than tell you, so I'm just going to show you a few examples of these before we move on to some other stuff. It's not that great of a logo design, okay? This was done in MS Paint. CNN purchases industrial-sized washing machine to spin the news in before publishing it. This is what started it all. We wrote this joke, we published this in Facebook, working with Snopes. Snopes fact-checked it, rated it false, and Facebook threatened to demonetize and deplatform us if we continue to spread fake news on their platform. A washing machine with a CNN logo on it. It's kind of a stupid joke. Like, I mean, come on. Of course they can't actually spin the news in a washing machine. That's stupid. We're protecting you from false information here, guys. You don't want to believe this one. I asked Snopes, I asked them what is the criteria they use for determining whether or not they're going to fact check a joke like this? And they said, well, it's based on reports. If lots of people report this and say, is this true? Or my grandmother shared this thinking it was true. Well, she has dementia like Joe Biden. CNN praises Taliban for wearing masks during attack. I like the chyron at the bottom. Taliban fighters responsibly wearing masks. It's covering their nose and mouth. Now, why is this joke funny and why did it go viral? Because people believed it was true. Now, why did they believe it was true? Was it because we tried to fool everybody, or is it because CNN has a track record where you could actually see them writing something like this? If a joke of ours is believable, that's an indictment of whoever we're satirizing, not us. We've done a bunch of CNN jokes. So many CNN jokes. Brian Stelter over there called us hoax satire for some reason. Hoax satire. What does that even mean? CNN stinks. Ocasio-Cortez appears on The Price is Right, guesses everything is free. This one, someone really thinks that's funny. It's okay. It's all right. This one's believable for a couple of reasons. I think it's an excellent Photoshop. Kudos to whoever on our team photoshopped this one. I don't even know all their names. Plus, she's stupid, right? So, this was fact-checked and rated false. Not satire. They didn't have a satire rating. There's no satire rating. False. It's not true. Don't believe this. It's dangerous disinformation. Ninth Circuit Court overturns death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. USA Today fact-checked this joke, and they cited 15 sources in their lengthy refutation of this joke. That's funnier than the joke itself. It is. It's crazy. National Review did a write-up on their fact check and said it was the stupidest fact check in the history of fact checks. How do you overturn somebody's death, and what does that even mean? Are we talking about a resurrection? What is that? It's absolutely absurd. The really crazy thing was, if you scroll down to the bottom of that USA Today fact check, there was fine print that said this fact check was paid for in part by grants from Facebook. So Facebook is paying USA Today to fact check our jokes, rate them false, and then sending us warnings that if we continue to publish false information, they're going to deplatform and demonetize us. I can't stand Facebook. Do young people still use Facebook? Okay. Good. I can tell, we don't get any traffic from there anymore. But it's not just the fact checks. You know, it's not just the fact that these jokes are getting rated false. You know, they've also been smearing us. You know, the New York Times called us misinformation under the guise of satire. We're pretending to be satirists, right? We're trying to fool people. We're trying to trick people with our jokes and get them to believe these things. And I puzzled over this for a long time. I tried to figure out exactly what is their aim? What are they going for? What are they after? Is it comedy? Is it that everybody wants a safe space and they don't want to be offended? Maybe that's part of it, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's ridiculous right now how everybody is trying to avoid being offended. But what are they offended by? Truth, right? Comedy is a vehicle for truth delivery. That's what they're after, not comedy. For the longest time, I kept calling this an attack on comedy. I even gave speeches where I talked about the attacks on comedy, the attacks on comedy. These weren't attacks on comedy, they're attacks on truth itself. And there's a great illustration of it with what happened with Twitter, which I'll get to in a minute. But I just want to, really quickly, before I move on from the misinformation thing, I want to go back to a point that I made on Rogan's show. You know, I said harmful misinformation is calling that baby a clump of cells. That is true harmful misinformation. Harmful misinformation. We use that word a lot. You know, we talk about how, you know, somebody used to say something like, oh, you know what, I don't think masks are that effective. And that would be flagged as harmful misinformation. But you can say anything that you want in support of the pro-abortion cause, and it's never flagged for harmful misinformation. And it actually results in death. Certainly, not just by chance. Not just, oh, maybe if you don't wear a mask, you might infect somebody. No. If you have an abortion, you're killing someone on purpose. Certainly. Harmful misinformation is everywhere on this topic, and it is never called out. And it's so easy to think of some examples. I'm gonna run through a few of them for you. Harmful misinformation is telling a woman that abortion is a decision about her body when another body and life is at stake. They tell that lie every day. Planned Parenthood tells that lie every day. Harmful misinformation is calling a baby a clump of cells or a parasite. They go that far as to call it a parasite. Harmful misinformation is calling abortion health care. Like I told Joe Rogan, abortion is health care the way that rape is lovemaking. Harmful misinformation is presenting abortion, not adoption, as the best answer to unwanted pregnancy. Harmful misinformation is telling women they're better off living with the guilt of killing their preborn children than coping with financial hardship. Can you imagine? Can you imagine telling a woman that she's better off killing her children than being poor? Is that really preferable? Harmful misinformation is telling women is framing abortion as self-defense. It's a real argument. They try to say that you're defending yourself. You're defending your body. You're defending your autonomy. You know, there are limits to autonomy. I'm a parent. I have 2 kids. I can't do whatever I want. I have to go home at some point, check on them, make sure they're eating, left them home alone. There are limits. Especially, you know, when you first have a baby, when my wife, it took her forever to get this baby out, by the way. I ran out of snacks. It was like a seriously dire situation. When she finally pushed hard enough and our son arrived, I hope she's not watching. Is this a live stream? Is there a live stream? Oh my gosh. Where was I even going with that? I've lost track. Yeah, when she finally pushed the baby out and I had a son, you know, our life changed dramatically. We all of a sudden had all of this responsibility. And she needed to use her body to care for and nurture and raise and love on this child. And she had to. It's a requirement. If you just leave your baby, it's neglect. The law protects your child. It limits your autonomy so that you have to take care of your baby. It is harmful misinformation to tell women that their autonomy supersedes the right to life of the child within them. Every argument like that assumes what needs to be proved. Every argument like that assumes that the unborn is not as deserving of life as the born. Every single one of them begs the question. That is an assumption that must be proved. If you're going to argue that it's okay to abort a child, you have to argue that that child somehow has less value than a human being that's born. You have to make that case. You can't just assume it. Harmful misinformation is the claim that saving sex for marriage is shameful or foolish. Harmful misinformation is the claim that we don't know when life begins. Of course we do. It's obvious when it does. Rogan said, "What do you think, there's a magic moment at conception?" Of course, yes. That's the most magical thing there is. And when do you notice he never responded to me. When I asked him, I said, when do you think the magic happens, right? You think we become valuable humans eventually. When do you think the magic happens? He never answered that question, didn't even try. Harmful misinformation is describing a procedure that intentionally ends a life as safe. There's so much harmful misinformation, and none of it gets flagged. Imagine if that kind of stuff got flagged instead of jokes about washing machines. And the overturning of the Ninth Circuit Court, or the overturning of Ruth Bader Ginsburg's death. I mean, come on. It's unbelievable. The priorities, the way that everything is flipped upside down. We are living in the upside down. And these claims rely very heavily on euphemisms. You have to cut through the language that they use. And this is an important point. I don't hear a lot of people who talk about abortion deal specifically with this issue of euphemisms and what it gives away. If you are whitewashing something, it means you know it's dirty. Right? If you are using language that intentionally and deceptively conceals what you're talking about, that is a concession. That is them admitting implicitly that they know it's wrong and they have to cover it up. Now, I mentioned before, the Babylon Bee has gotten caught up in all these attacks on truth, and I think we're just in the middle. It's not the Babylon Bee that's under fire, it's the truth that's under fire, and we just happen to be in the way of it because we're a vehicle for truth delivery. Well, what was one of the jokes that got us in the most trouble? We made this joke. USA Today had named Rachel Levine one of their picks for Women of the Year. You guys remember this one? So we fired back in defense of sanity and truth and women everywhere, real women. By the way, that was an insult to real women everywhere. I hope you all agree with that. We said, nah, you know what? We're going to name Rachel Levine Man of the Year. And Twitter did not like that. That's misgendering. That's a joke. It's called punching down now. They have this new thing. I don't know if you guys have heard of punching down. There are rules for comedians now. Lots of rules. You've got to follow the rules. You cannot punch down. Punching down is when you make jokes about people who are marginalized and oppressed and have less power than you. I have a couple things to say about that. For one thing, imagine thinking to yourself, well, you got to put yourself in a situation where you're thinking about, well, who has less power than me? Who's beneath me on the power structure? Imagine sitting there and you're thinking to yourself as a comedy writer, you got one challenge. You got to be funnier than Democrats in real life. That's one challenge. But then on top of that, you have to think to yourself, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't make this joke. Those people are beneath me. Is that really where our heads should go? Do we want to be like forcing people to think in those terms? I shouldn't joke about those people, they're beneath me. I feel like if we're all created equally, we should be able to joke about each other indiscriminately, right? Shouldn't we be able to do that? I should be able to joke about women if I want to. They're not beneath me. On the power, well, maybe on the power structure according to society, but can I joke about them? I don't think they're beneath me. It's not punching down. I assume there are some women here. I have no idea because I'm not a biologist. Some of you look like women, but what do I know? I don't want to make any assumptions. The other thing about punching down, marginalized, and you know what the word marginalized means? Pull up a dictionary, an old one, because they changed the definitions of these things. Buy a hard copy dictionary that's like 20 years old and keep it. Marginalized means that you're forgotten, you're ignored, you're not valued by society. I can think of someone who fits that description, and it's the unborn baby, not the trans person who's on the cover of magazines. I'm supposed to think that the person who was just named Woman of the Year, who is a high-ranking white male government official, who has all of the backing of the biggest corporations, the entertainment complex, big tech, everything behind him, her, is, and that's marginalization, really. Upside down, guys. This is the upside down. The unborn are marginalized. The unborn are forgotten. The unborn are oppressed. And where's the concern for them? This is how you know it's all faux compassion. It's fake. If it was real, that's who they'd be concerned about. The most vulnerable. Rachel Levine is not vulnerable, and Rachel Levine was not harmed by our joke. Jokes don't really hurt people. They might hurt your feelings sometimes. I don't even think that's a bad thing. I defend comedy that hurts people's feelings. You know why? Because we have too much pride and we take ourselves too seriously. If your pride gets pricked a little bit and you bristle at a joke, well, then maybe you have a little bit too much pride and need to take yourself a little bit less seriously. Laugh. Just laugh. Don't go hunting for a safe space. People are just streaming out. I've offended everyone. Dude, these attacks on us, though, you know, it's just ridiculous, this stuff. We did have there was something positive that came out of this, though. Someone, this really rich guy named Elon Musk noticed what was going on. And he actually bought Twitter to preserve free speech. This was a big deal, by the way. It's a really big deal. He recognized that there are so many bad ideas out there and that we are actually being prohibited from talking about them and addressing them, even with jokes. I asked him why he thought wokeness was so bad. I interviewed him in December of 2021, and I asked him, because he had said a couple of times that wokeness is one of the greatest threats to civilization. I asked him, why do you think wokeness is so harmful? What's so bad about it? He said, wokeness is divisive, exclusionary, and hateful. It gives mean people an excuse to be cruel while armored in false virtue. That's true. I think it's very true. Wokeness is divisive, exclusionary, and hateful. It needs to be dealt with. It needs to be refuted. It needs to be ridiculed. It needs to be mocked. That's why it's so much the target of our mockery on the Babylon Bee, is because these are dangerous, bad ideas. Bad ideas, if allowed to flourish, if they take root in people's hearts and minds, can have bad effects in culture. C.S. Lewis said, good philosophy must exist if for no other reason because bad philosophy needs to be answered. And I think that's great. I think that's, there's a call for reason and refutation, refuting bad arguments. It's also the exact same reason why satire is necessary. Satire ridicules bad ideas, and that is a moral good. There is an imperative for moral mockery. Moral mockery. It's a thing. I know it sounds bad. Everybody looks at me weird when I say mockery is a good thing. We need to mock more things. They're like, what are you talking about? Isn't that mean? Isn't it cruel? Don't you hurt people's feelings? Well, like I said, maybe you might hurt some people's feelings, but the purpose of mockery in the context of what we do here at the Babylon Bee is to expose the foolishness of bad ideas. It's to ridicule things that deserve to be ridiculed. It's to draw out hypocrisy and double standards and show why something should not be taken seriously. Part of the reason why we're in this situation right now where we can't speak the truth, where the truth is being limited, is because we took bad ideas too seriously. We affirmed and accepted what we should have ridiculed and rejected. So how do we do this with a sensitive topic like abortion? It's not easy. How do you joke about the death, the intentional murder of children? It's a weird time to clap, dude. How do you joke about that? That is a difficult topic. Well, you target the ideas themselves. You target the institutions that are pushing these ideas, and you mock them because they deserve it. They do. They really do. I want to show you some examples of some of the ways that we've handled this topic. It's worth it if it saves just one life, says woman who supports abortion on demand. I think COVID really exposed what a lie it is when they say my body, my choice, right? Because they were all about mandates. They were all about mandates for masks and vaccines. And you heard them say it. It's worth it. You have to do it. If it saves just one life, you have to do it. And it's not even guaranteed that you're saving a life. It's not even guaranteed that you're putting anyone at risk. It's just you're reducing the risk, possibly, if you wear this cloth over your mouth. You have to do it. You might save a life. We say that abortion should be refrained from because it will certainly save a life. Why haven't they joined us on that one? Why haven't they joined us if they think this way? It's a really good question. Man identifies as woman just long enough to voice valued opinion on abortion. Now, they messed themselves up on this one, too, because, they used to say no uterus, no opinion. Remember that? No uterus, no opinion. You don't need a uterus to be a woman anymore. Remember Rachel Levine? So if you don't need a uterus, you can have an opinion on abortion. You just need to identify as a woman.
Cringe.
What was that? Cringe. I definitely wouldn't have supported the Holocaust if I lived in Nazi Germany, says woman who supports abortion today. And you know what? It's an appropriate response. Satire sometimes makes you go, ooh. It's not always about laughter. I've had some people say with jokes like this, they're like, well, that's not funny. It's not supposed to be. This is serious. We're not really joking here. This is serious. The equivalent, if you look into the past, the things that you can look to that are actually comparable to abortion are things like Nazism, the extermination of the Jews, slavery, things where people were devalued, they weren't treated as human. That's no laughing matter. This is serious satire. Planned Parenthood defends Bill Cosby. Sexual assault is only 3% of what he does. Hey, guys, 97% of the time, he's not assaulting anyone, okay? He's a good guy. Unborn babies disguise selves as death row inmates so liberals will defend their right to live. You know, if we can conjure up compassion for convicted rapists and murderers who are on death row and argue for their lives, why can't we do it for babies? And that's a good question. Supreme Court to carefully consider pros, cons of baby murder. We know how this one turned out, thankfully. And you know, the word progressive is used a lot. Progress, we need change, we need progress. Progress in this case was going backwards, wasn't it? Progress was going back. We got off on the wrong road. I'll throw another Lewis quote at you, and I'm going to botch it because I don't know it exactly, but he said something like, when you're on the wrong road, progress means doing an about turn and going back to where the right road is. And the man who turns back soonest in that case is the most progressive. The Supreme Court turned us back, took us backwards to where we should have been. And that was huge progress, huge victory. I'm running out of time, so I want to encourage you guys with a few things. You know, we get attacked a lot. I get attacked personally. I get death threats. The Babylon Bee has been, like I said, censored and smeared. And I'm asked all the time if it discourages me, if it keeps me up at night, am I bothered by it? And the answer is absolutely not. If you're not being attacked, you're not doing it right. You're not doing it right. If you've made enemies on the secular progressive left who hate you, good. It means you stood up for something true. It means you stood up for something right. It means you didn't cower in the corner and censor yourself. And you may pay a price for being bold. We did. We were off Twitter for 8 months. We drive a lot of traffic and revenue through Twitter. We gave up a lot of money and a lot of reach, a lot of access. The only reason Joe Rogan even knows who we are is because of Twitter. The only reason Elon Musk knows who we are is because of Twitter. And we gave that up, and we were willing to stay suspended for the truth that Rachel Levine is a man, not a woman. We were willing to do that and stay in Twitter jail forever. Elon Musk stood up for truth and freedom when he bought Twitter, and he has paid a tremendous price. He's lost almost the majority of his wealth at this point. I think he was the first person in history to lose $200 billion as his stock with Tesla continued to decline in value. Unprecedented amount of wealth has been lost. His reputation has been torn to shreds because he tried to preserve free speech so that we could say things like Rachel Levine is a man. That's incredibly costly. The cost can be high, physically, emotionally, financially, but we can't let that hold us back. What's right is right, and I can't put it more simply and truthfully than this. The only thing more costly than standing up to the culture of death is not standing up to it. Keep this in mind too. Your boldness will, it absolutely will embolden others. If you stand up and refuse to back down, others will too. Courage is contagious. It's what you might call a good infection. Take the mask of fear off and spread it everywhere. If we can change hearts on this topic, we can change culture. If we can change culture, we can change the law. If we can change the law, we can save lives. There is a war on reality, reason, truth, and life. It's fundamentally spiritual, not political. And there have been many millions of casualties. But it's not over yet. The next generation, sitting in this room right now, can withstand the assault if they're well equipped and if public policy that honors God's truth is advanced and vigorously defended. The responsibility for that lands squarely on each of us. We must value clarity as much as the enemy loves confusion. We must be as determined to affirm the truth as they are to deny it. We must be as eager to protect our children as they are to corrupt them. And we must be as willing to defend innocent life as they are to destroy it. This is the post-Roe generation right here in this room. You are the answer to the culture of death. And you're honoring God by joining in this fight. I hope you know that. Never forget it. Thank you.